for week 6 of the diabetes webinar series. This week, we are going to be taking you on a virtual grocery store tour, which we're really excited about. And at the end, we're going to be reviewing some key takeaways from the entire course that we've had here. So with that, if you remember from last week, my name is Lindsay Moran. I'm one of the registered dietitians here at Connect Care 3, and Kate is here as well.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And yeah, so Kate and I are the registered dietitians here. As you see here on the screen, this is our diabetes course outline. And congratulations, you have officially made it to week 6, the final week of the series. And let's get started. We'll first recap briefly from last week. If you joined us last week, Kate and I discussed finding a healthy eating plan that works for you. We reviewed the 3 macronutrients which provide our bodies with energy, and those are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. We discussed the benefits of following a consistent carbohydrate diet and walked through a few nutrition strategies to help you create well-balanced meals and snacks. So those were things like reading the food label or using the plate method or carb counting, or some of those things we touched on last week. Now this week, as you know, we're going to be walking you through the grocery store. First, we're going to talk about preparing for the store. Next, we're going to further dive into how to understand and read nutrition facts labels. We briefly touched on that last week. We're going to go through a little bit more today. And last but not least, we're going to spend the bulk of the presentation taking you through kind of each and every aisle or area of the grocery store and going over some good choices in each and how to get the most nutrition out of each section. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kate and we will get started.
So before we can enter that grocery store, we need to make sure we're prepared. So Lindsay and I have created a couple of things to consider before you go into the store. So, we wanted to ask first, how do you currently prepare for the store? We probably have some professional shoppers out there, so we would love for you to, take a minute and think about what you do to be successful at the grocery store. We suggest before heading to the store to plan out a few ideas of meals or snacks you might like to have that week. If you're feeling bored or needing new ideas, we recommend trying some recipe resources, websites or apps that you might like, or ask a family member or coworker to give you some ideas. That can always spur some creativity or help you think outside the box. And also, we highly suggest saving your favorite recipes so that when you do have a week where you're just, what should I make this week? You can go to your book or your box of recipes. Then once you have your meals and snack ideas in mind, this is when we're going to start making that grocery list. This is going to, first step is see what you currently already have, right? Maybe your recipe calls for peppers and you have some frozen ones, so you're good to go. But then you want to keep track of the ingredients that you still need to get. Certainly you can use good old pen and paper, but they make many apps now that can help you to sort your items into a list. And I personally like some of these apps because it actually sorts them by category of the grocery store. So you can kind of stay organized. You don't have to run back through all the aisles. Once your list is made, this is where we want to start thinking about assessing it for nutrition. So we really want to look to see if we're covering our 5 food groups. We recommend having, certain items from your protein source, whether that's animal or plant-based like we talked about last week. You want to have some dairy or dairy alternatives like almond milk or regular milk and yogurt. We want to include our starch and grains in there and then finish off with some fruits and vegetables on that list. You will learn today that there are many options. You can go from fresh to frozen to canned, and they all offer you some great nutrition. Something else to keep in mind is use the store's websites or apps or even the paper for coupons and deals. A lot of times this could be an area if you're not sure what to make. Okay, well, what protein's on sale this week? Or can I buy one, get one free because I have a big family? So this can also spur some ideas. And lastly, I think we've all been to the store hungry. It's pretty tough. We encourage you to have a really good meal or snack before going grocery shopping, even if it's a protein bar in your purse or something. This really helps you to focus on your list and be successful in the store. So now that you have your list, you're ready to start out on your trip. But we have a few more considerations to help make your grocery trip a great one. As I mentioned, when making your list, we also want to include those 5 food groups in our cart. So this can be another great way visually to make sure you're getting all of your food groups. The cart you see on the screen is kind of a spin-off what we call the My Plate, which is the nutritional plate we talked about last week based by the USDA. Take note of your cart while shopping. Did you get items from various food groups? Do you see color and variety? This doesn't mean everything has to be fresh either. This could look like canned beans, frozen vegetables, and dried fruit. Use tools like these to help you on your shopping trip. If you remember, last week we talked about the plate setup for diabetes and how all of these food groups fit together. Remember, for meals, we want to aim for at least 3 out of the 5 food groups, and for snacks, at least 2. As pairing our foods together really helps with blood sugar regulation and making sure that you're getting all your nutrition. Another tool that is helpful when you're exploring your options is the food label. Lindsay's going to share more about that with us.
Thank you, Kate. So if you were with us last week, you remember we talked about the serving size on the nutrition facts label as well as the carbohydrate section. So we really focused on where to look when we're specifically trying to identify how many carbohydrates or how many grams of sugar are in a certain food. So today we wanted to just take some time to explore some of the other areas of the nutrition facts label. So we're going to briefly go over that. Starting with the green section at the top, again, kind of similar to what we talked about last week, but you're going to notice the serving size. For this particular food, we see that a serving size is 1 cup. What's really important to note about the serving size is that this, every other number on the nutrition facts label is based off of that 1 serving size. So let's say you wanted to have 2 cups of whatever this food is here. You'd have to multiply everything else on the label by 2. Let's see. Now, moving forward, we also have, further down in that green section, you see the calories. Calories, just a brief reminder, are just a unit of energy. So calories are going to tell you, how much energy in general the food is going to give you. As we continue to move down the nutrition facts label into the red section, we see some items to just be mindful of or to be more aware of. In there, you'll see the total fat, and under that, it's broken down further into saturated fat and trans fats. If you remember from last week, those saturated fats and those trans fats are the fats that we kind of want to limit. We're going to want to try and get less than 10% of our daily calories from saturated fat. So if you're following a 2,000 calorie diet, that's around 20 grams or so per day. And again, we're trying to get as little trans fats as we can. In this section as well, you'll see sodium, and as a whole, it's recommended that we're getting less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. So keeping that in mind as we're making our choices throughout the grocery store as well. And of course, you see the carbohydrate section. So an area that we want to be really mindful of when we're making these choices, because carbohydrates are those foods that will have the greatest effect on your blood sugar. Of course, as we mentioned, that certainly does not mean that we can't eat these carbohydrates. We just need to find a way to fit them into our diet in a way that will be beneficial to us. Further on down the nutrition facts label, you see in navy blue some items to strive for. So there we have our dietary fiber highlighted, again, because we're really trying to get at least 25 to 38 or so grams of fiber a day. Really want to meet those fiber goals. We also see protein in this section, along with a variety of other vitamins and minerals that we can get from eating a really well-balanced diet with a lot of variety. And last but not least, on the right-hand side of the nutrition facts label, we see the % daily value highlighted in purple. And this is my personal favorite section because I think it's a really important section that is underutilized and that not many people know enough about. So what's awesome about the percent daily value column is that it can help you to determine if our food is high or low in a particular nutrient. And we do this using what we call the 5 and 20 rule. So what the percent daily value 5 and 20 rule states is that if an item contains 5% or less of the daily value, we can assume that it is low in that particular nutrient. On the other hand, if the item contains 20% or more of the daily value of a particular nutrient, we can assume that it's high in that particular nutrient. So, for example, let's look at sodium on this label here. We see that there are 80 milligrams and that means there's 3% of the daily value. So using the 5 and 20 rule, we can say that 3% is less than 5, so this is a low sodium food. On the other hand, if you move down a few rows, we see in dietary fiber, they're listed to have 7 grams or 25% of the daily value. Since 25 is greater than 20, we can assume that this food is high in fiber, or it's a good source of fiber. So again, this can be a really helpful tool as you're navigating the grocery store to, help you identify foods that are going to fit within your individual needs. But let's say the nutrition facts label might seem a little bit too overwhelming at first and you need something a little bit easier to help you quickly identify what foods to choose. You can use some food packaging claims to help you with that. You may be familiar with food packaging claims on some of your favorite products. Phrases like low sugar, reduced fat, or calcium builds strong bones are all examples of these claims. When it comes to managing your diabetes, these food packaging claims can be helpful in easily and quickly identifying foods that may be lower in carbohydrates and or sugar. So let's take a closer look. We'll start with the term free. Free is used on a variety of products to indicate the absence of certain ingredients. You might be familiar with seeing items labeled as sugar-free or fat-free. If we're referring specifically to sugar, it might be great if looking to limit your total sugar intake, but it's also important to remember that the food may still contain carbohydrates. We can't just assume that because an item is sugar-free that it is also carbohydrate-free. So that becomes important when trying to manage our diabetes, right? A lot of times I hear clients saying, well, I ate this because it was sugar-free. I didn't think it would do anything to my blood sugar. So it's important to remember that sugar-free does not mean carbohydrate-free. There may still be other sources of carbs that are just not coming from sugar. So that would be the case if you see that sugar-free claim on the front, then maybe turn it over to the back and look at that nutrition facts label to look at that total carbohydrate section. You might also be familiar with the terms reduced or less. An item labeled as reduced sugar will have 25% less sugar than its original counterpart. Again, however, it's important to note that this indicates there is still some sugar in the food, and therefore there's still going to be some carbohydrates. So again, I know I might sound like a broken record, but although these food packaging claims are helpful, you want to still refer back to the nutrition facts label. Another common food packaging claim is no added. So you might be familiar with the phrase no added sugar, for example. And again, really great at trying to reduce your intake of added sugars, but still important to check that label. There might still be natural sugar or other sources of carbohydrate, which would be important to understand when creating your food plan. So again, these food packaging claims are great to help you quickly identify foods that may align with your needs. However, they only provide a snapshot. Review the nutrition facts label for the full story. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Kate.
Perfect. Now that you have your list, you prepared your cart, and thanks to Lindsay, you have some knowledge on the food label, you are ready to take on the store. So knowing your store is helpful in making your flow easier, right? Oftentimes we hear that the perimeter of the store is your main location. However, today we are here to show you that nutrition is really found in every aisle, even the middle ones. So consider your grocery shopping as an important step when managing your diabetes. Our first stop is the produce aisle. Usually the first thing you see when you enter the store, there's lots of color and variety. So let's chat about a couple of tips for this section. The produce section offers many great nutritional foods, usually filling those fruit and veggie sections of your plate. My first tip is to stock up on a variety of colors. Like I said, colors equal different vitamins and minerals. Consider things you might normally overlook, like flavoring options such as fresh herbs provide you with certain vitamins and minerals, or even citrus. You know, sometimes people say they're concerned about the cost of fresh produce, and certainly depending what we get, it can add up. But I like to highlight that many produce sections contain a local and seasonal section. This is a great way to eat what's currently in season and usually to save on cost. Another thing to look out for is some grocery stores will offer a sale or discounted section, and don't overlook this. I shop here quite a bit because you can get lots of yummy produce still, and it's still edible. You might find avocados that need to be used that day or the next day, or you might find peppers, you know, that aren't as stiff as when you first would get them, but maybe you're making fajitas and it doesn't matter anyway, right? So definitely look for that section of your produce aisle as well. Sometimes clients say to me that fresh produce takes a long time to prep. And so many stores now offer ready-to-eat or cook produce that's washed or sliced or chopped and just ready to go. And this is great if convenience is what you need. For best blood sugar management, we want to aim for produce with fiber. As we discussed last week, fiber is a non-digestible carb, and it's important for things like feeling full and keeping your digestion regular. But it also actually helps with breaking down sugars, and it has a more gradual digestion, which improves blood sugar. For example, you might consider choosing a whole apple with that skin and that fiber versus an apple juice, which is more likely to spike that blood sugar quicker. Many fruits provide fiber, especially ones with skins like apples, peaches, pears, and even berries. Vegetables also contain fiber, but especially the starchy ones like potatoes with the skin and sweet potatoes, winter squashes in season. And although these contain carbohydrates more than the non-starchy vegetables like lettuce and cucumbers and carrots, they really do give you that extra fiber. So many of those starchy vegetables are in season right now, so again, consider shopping seasonally. As I mentioned, shopping seasonally is great for your budget, but also your nutrition, right? Our winter and fall produce give us certain vitamins we might not get other times of year. So here you see just a few examples of seasonal produce offered right now. Another tip is to plan your meals around the seasonal produce, right? Maybe we're making a nice potato dish this season or a yummy soup with pumpkin. There's lots of options. Be mindful that starchy vegetables such as corn, peas, potatoes, and pumpkin that we talked about, even though they give you that great nutrition, they're still going to kind of go on that starchy side of our plate that we talked about last week. So you still want to get your proteins, you still want to add another vegetable like broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Okay, so off to from the produce, and next we will make our way to the deli.
Awesome. So although meats and cheeses that you'll find behind the deli counter won't likely have a big impact on blood sugar, it's still important to make health-conscious choices. Having a diabetes diagnosis also puts you at increased risk for heart disease, which means that making heart-healthy food choices is important. This means, as we talked about last week, limiting the intake of those saturated fats and consuming sodium in moderation as well. Many deli items are high in sodium and saturated fat. So let's talk about how to make some smarter choices here. Aim to limit intake of highly processed meats such as pepperoni, salami, or bologna, as they have very high contents of these sodiums and saturated fats. Instead, you might look for a turkey breast or roasted chicken option. When choosing cheeses, you might look for a reduced fat or low sodium option. Better choices include Swiss cheese or reduced fat cheddar. We'll talk a little bit more about cheeses once we get to the dairy section. The deli also contains many pre-made salads and meals. Unfortunately, many of these options are also higher in, again, those saturated fats and sodium, so it's important to choose wisely and to consume in moderation. Instead, you might consider making your own favorite pasta or tuna salad at home, as this will likely be a healthier option, and you can customize your ingredients to make sure it aligns with your particular nutrition needs. So we've talked about some things to avoid, but what are some better options to choose at the deli? Like we said earlier, a turkey breast or a roasted chicken option, maybe a lean cut of ham that's low sodium if possible, or some roast beef would be some better options. You might also choose a rotisserie chicken, even better if you take the skin off of it, as this can be a really great, easy weeknight meal. You could eat it plain, you can slice it up to make your own chicken salad, you can put it in chicken soup. Really, the options are endless with a rotisserie chicken, and it can be great for meal prep as well. In the deli section, you might also explore the salad bar. This is a great place to go if you need a quick lunch. You can get some fruits, vegetables, whatever they have available, put it all in that bowl there, and top it with a nice oil-based dressing. This can be, again, a really great quick lunch or even in addition to your dinner. You might choose to get a really large salad and have bits and pieces of it throughout the week. But this is a great area to explore. If you're looking for some of the pre-made salads, look for ones that are oil-based, like maybe a pasta salad with an oil-based dressing. And of course, it would be even better if some veggies are mixed in. Another option that you might find in the deli area are some pickled eggs. Eggs are a really great source of protein, and if you'd like that pickling taste, that can be a really good option for you. And that kind of concludes the deli section. With that, we'll round the corner to meat and seafood.
So the meat and seafood section has many similar considerations to the deli, actually. So although many meat and seafood products do not contain carbohydrates that impact your blood sugar, we still want to aim for items that are lean to keep in mind that heart health. Lean protein options are lower in that saturated fat, like Lindsay had mentioned. So saturated fats are the fats that are usually solid at room temperature. So think butter or that marbling that you see in meat, usually that's a good sign of saturated fat. This type of fat, if consumed above recommended amounts, is harmful for our heart. If you choose red meat, or maybe you have someone in the family who just can't avoid it, which is okay, try choosing leaner options. Consider things like 93% lean and 7% fat. You know, a lot of choices we can pick the fat content. Try choosing naturally lean proteins like chicken, turkey, those type of poultries. Or meet in the middle and try a combination of both. For example, let's say you're making meatballs. You might try to add half beef and half turkey. Also, we want to aim to include fish into the diet. Many fish varieties often offer beneficial heart health fats, such as omega-3s. Currently, the American Heart Association recommends 2 servings of fish per week. If you don't like fish, you may need to get those omega-3s through things like nuts or seeds, or talk to your doctor about a supplement. Lastly, try choosing leaner cooking methods when you're considering your meats and seafoods. Many cooking methods allow fats to drip or cook off easier, such as baking or grilling. You can also try using less oil when you're cooking or frying. You might try sauteing with water or broth, or with nothing, or just a little spray. So these are all options to make your meat and seafood better choices. This section of your plate will cover your protein and pair nicely for your blood sugar management with your carbohydrates and vegetables.
Awesome. Now we're rounding the corner to the usually where I'll find it in the back of the store or the side of the store, is to the eggs and dairy section. Dairy products like milk and yogurt are great sources of protein and can certainly be part of a healthy diet. It's important to remember, however, that these dairy products do contain natural sources of sugar, therefore meaning they will contain carbohydrates and can affect your blood sugar. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be consuming these products, but is rather a reminder to read those labels and to make educated purchases. When choosing milk, we'd recommend looking for low-fat or fat-free options when they're available, again, to decrease that total saturated fat intake. If you're really someone who doesn't like the taste of reduced fat milk and would prefer whole milk, it's okay. Just it makes it more important to be mindful of other sources of saturated fat in your diet to make sure you can cut back on them. So let's say you really like that whole milk and it's something you have like every morning or every evening, then maybe it would be more important to choose those lean meats like Kate talked about more regularly, or to avoid packaged foods that are going to be really high in saturated fat. We want to pick and choose how we're going to stay under that recommended saturated fat content daily. So again, choosing those reduced fat and skim milks when possible is best. Moving on to yogurt. Yogurt is not only delicious, but it's very nutritious. It's a great source of protein as well as a variety of vitamins and minerals and even maybe probiotics, depending on the brand. When choosing yogurt, it's important to be conscious of sugar levels. Although yogurt will naturally contain some sugar, depending on the brand or the type of yogurt you choose, there might be quite a bit of added sugar hiding in there as well. To get the most bang for your buck nutritionally speaking, we would recommend choosing a plain, reduced fat Greek yogurt, which will give you low to moderate sugar content, a good source of protein, and is lower in fat than its full fat alternative. To add some fiber and sweetness to a plain yogurt, you might consider mixing fresh fruit or even frozen fruit in, or topping with some low sugar granola. If plain yogurt just won't cut it for you, not to worry. Brands like Chobani and Oikos have created tasty flavored yogurts with no added sugar or with less sugar than their original products. Again, just be sure to look at those food labels so you're aware of what's inside and can make a balanced snack or meal with that yogurt that you choose. Next up, we'll come back to cheese. I know we talked about that a little bit in the deli section, but cheese is generally low in carbohydrates, but can be high in saturated fat and sodium. So looking for reduced fat cheese options when possible is ideal. You might see them labeled as reduced fat or part skim. Some of our favorite types of cheese include cottage cheese, feta cheese, Swiss cheese, that part skim mozzarella, or even a provolone or ricotta. All make for good cheese options. Now don't worry, we haven't forgotten about those of you who may follow a vegetarian, vegan, or plant-based diet. There are a variety of dairy alternatives available today. You might see soy milk, coconut milk, almond milk, and all of those are usually also available in yogurt options as well. There are so many things to choose from. And although they are great alternatives, it's important to note that many of them are usually a lot higher in carbohydrates and or sugar. So again, just be sure to review your food labels to make sure you're making an educated purchase. And last but not least, in the dairy section, you'll find eggs. Eggs are a really great source of protein. They do not contain any carbohydrates, so you don't have to worry about them raising your blood sugar, and they would pair greatly with maybe a higher carbohydrate food like scrambled eggs and a piece of toast, or a hard-boiled egg and a piece of fruit for a snack. They're a really great option that you can get from this section. And with that, we'll move on to frozen foods.
Lindsay, I often hear people referring to the frozen section as bad or unhealthy. I don't know if you hear that too.
Definitely.
But this really just isn't the case. You know, you can get many of your food groups and nutrition in the frozen section, but we do want to highlight a few areas. One tip is I often recommend stocking up on frozen fruits and veggies. These are particularly great towards the end of the week or the month once you've eaten up your fresh ones. They also work great for quick prepared meals. Things like tacos, fajitas, soups, stews, or even fruit smoothies are great ways to utilize your frozen produce. These options last longer, are more budget friendly, and they're truly picked at their peak ripeness before frozen, so that you're still getting that fresh feel. Moving on to more of what we would consider frozen entrees, lunches, dinners. When it comes to those more complete meals, there's a couple of things we want to consider. First, use your food label here, like Lindsay talked about. Especially when it comes to these types of meals. They usually offer carbohydrates, proteins, and vegetables. So we're getting those three, out of the 5 food groups. As it relates to your blood sugar, you want to check the food label for the carbohydrates. Remember, individual carbohydrate needs really vary and are very individualized, but on average, women could aim for about 45 grams per meal and men about 60 grams per meal. If you're more active, if you don't eat every meal, this might look different. So as Lindsay mentioned, don't forget to check your serving suggestions, as one meal may be more than 1 serving. We've seen that a few times. So although it might be okay to eat the whole frozen entree, if it's 2 servings, you may need to double the numbers on the label. Another consideration with frozen meals is the sodium content. And as we talked about, with diabetes, you also become more sodium sensitive, and we want to consider your blood pressure. If you're aiming for a full meal, if this frozen entree is taking over a whole meal, try to keep the sodium around 600 milligrams. Many brands are now trying to reduce sodium in their frozen options. We want to suggest a few, but there's certainly many more out there. As you can see on the screen, we like the Evil or Love Spelled Backwards brand, Smart Made, Healthy Choice, and there are many others. Next time you pull out your favorite frozen dish, check your food label and think about those food groups. So speaking of convenience, let's chat about packaged foods.
All right. So often I hear people say that you need to shop the perimeter of the store to achieve a healthy diet. And that's just far from the truth. There are plenty of nutritious options to be found in those center aisles. You just need to know what to look for. Some of our kitchen staples are packaged foods, and that's okay. Looking for options such as whole wheat pasta, brown rice, quinoa, or unsweetened oatmeal for high fiber and healthy carbohydrate choices are just a few of the many great things that are available in these center aisles. In the center aisles, you'll also come across the baking section. Of course, flour contains carbohydrates. To make a more nutritious choice, you might consider using a whole wheat flour instead of white flour in your next baked good or your next recipe. Furthermore, if you're trying to reduce sugar in your baking, you might try using a non-nutritive sweetener such as Truvia or monk fruit sweetener in your next dish. You'll still get to enjoy that sweet taste, but with a reduced effect on your blood sugar. As we talked about last week, usually these sugar substitutes can be replaced or used in a 1-to-1 ratio, with regular sugar. So if you were going to use 1 cup of regular sugar, you could use 1 cup of the non-nutritive sweetener. But that being said, usually on the package, it will tell you how you can use it in place of sugar, so be sure to check those labels. In these aisles, you'll also come across condiments, also sauces, marinades, and even dressings. Each of these may likely contain hidden sugars and sodium. So let's take condiments, for example. Did you know that ketchup and barbecue sauce contain both sugar and salt? You might choose to look for lower sugar or lower sodium options, or just be mindful of portion sizes with these products. If you're looking to season your food without a lot of added sugar or sodium, look in those center aisles for herbs and spices. You can really elevate a dish with a few different spices. If you're looking for sodium-free options, you might enjoy brands like Mrs. Dash. They are sodium-free but full of flavor. You might even consider creating your own blend. An example might be mixing together onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, dried mustard, maybe some thyme leaves or white pepper, mixing that all together and using it as a seasoning blend for chicken or vegetables. You can come up with so many different combinations like this, again, so you're really elevating that flavor of your dish without adding that added salt or sugar. So these are all important considerations for the packaged food aisle. Now, in the packaged food section of the store, you'll also find several of your favorite snack items. Snacks are a really important part of our diet as they provide energy and nourishment to help keep us satisfied between meals. A well-balanced snack can also help to keep blood sugar stable. Unfortunately, however, many snack foods are likely high in saturated fat, maybe sugar, sodium, so on and so forth. High sugar snacks might include things like candies, cookies, Pop-Tarts, fruit roll-ups, or fruit snacks, just to name a few. Instead, you might explore the aisles and look for options that are lower in sugar and unhealthy fats, but higher in other nutrients like fiber. For example, you might try some unbuttered popcorn like Boom Chicka Pop or some roasted chickpeas. Maybe unsalted nuts or seeds will make up your next snack. As always, remember to read food labels and look for those food packaging claims as we talked about earlier. Looking for snacks that are lower in added sugar and salt will be key. Also, remember the importance of pairing when it comes to your blood sugar control. To create a well-balanced snack, we want to include at least 2 food groups. For example, choosing a source of carb like an apple with a source of protein or fat like peanut butter. Pairing that together will give you the best blood sugar control and also help to keep you feeling full and satisfied. So let's go over some good snack examples, just to name a few. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, maybe an unbuttered popcorn like Skinny Pop or Boom Chicka Pop. You might even try something like Popcorners popcorn chips. And pairing that with maybe some nuts. So you have that source of carbohydrate coming from the popcorn and then some protein and fat coming from your nuts. You might also try a whole grain cracker with a reduced fat cheese. So maybe something like Triscuits or Good Thins. Nut Thins are another good example. We also really like a brand called Mary's Gong Crackers. Each of these are made with whole grains and are good sources of fiber as well. You could pair these with a reduced fat cheese, maybe a reduced fat cheese stick or a light Baby Bell cheese circle if you're, on the go and need something that's convenient. If you're someone who really likes to snack on crunchy items like chips or pretzels, some alternatives might be a brand called From the Ground Up cauliflower tortilla chips. You might try Ritz Crisp and Thins, again, Pop Chips or Popcorners, or even Food Should Taste Good multigrain chips. So this will give you a really good source of carbohydrate with some fiber, and you can dip that in something like salsa or guacamole or hummus or maybe a bean dip. That guacamole, hummus, or bean dip will give you some good healthy fats, maybe a little bit more fiber, and even a little bit of protein, so a great pairing there. I talked about earlier, pairing peanut butter with fruits or veggies is a great option, or unsalted nuts or seeds, or even a trail mix with a fresh piece of fruit. Granola bars or protein bars are also found in the snack aisle, which can really be great options, especially if you're on the go, but you just want to be mindful because sometimes there can be a lot of saturated fat or added sugar in these products. In general, we usually recommend looking for a granola bar that has more than 3 grams of fiber, less than 10 grams of fat, and less than 7 grams of added sugar. So just something to keep in mind as you're making your choices. So again, you're going to find so many options in these packaged food sections of the store, whether it be your snacks, your baking items, your herbs and spices. There are so many things in these center aisles, but not all of them are bad. Just take your time to, either review things before you go to the store and really make that list, or read your food labels and look at those food packaging claims while you are in the store to make the best choices. Now we move on to canned foods.
So canned foods can be a great place to get all your food groups as well, while considering things like convenience and affordability and shelf life. The can aisle covers just about all food groups, but you can especially find some great quick protein sources here. Items like canned beans or canned fish and meats are found here, and they offer that protein, and the beans also give you some fiber and carbohydrates. All of these are important for managing blood sugar. Lindsay, one of my favorite lunches, actually half of the ingredients are from the can aisle. I really like to whip up a quick lunch. I call it my easy Mediterranean salad. It's a can of chickpeas, I add a can of diced tomatoes, and a half can of Kalamata olives. And then I toss with a little Greek dressing and maybe some cucumber and feta cheese, and you have yourself a yummy lunch. So it really can be that quick and canned. You will also find many of your starchy vegetables here, such as canned corn, canned peas, and canned beans. Like we discussed, you don't really need to avoid them, but we certainly want to factor the carbohydrates. You can also actually get many of your non-starchy vegetables here too, that half plate that we talked about last week. Green beans, things like that. Some tips for canned foods for other health considerations might be to look for canned foods without added salt, or if you can't find that, if you're able to, drain and rinse them, like beans or green beans. This is a good thing to do. For fruits, you might aim for items in their natural juices and water, not added syrups. That actually adds quite a bit of added sugar that we don't really need. And for canned fish, you might want to find ones in its own water and not oil if you're factoring for more heart health-focused options. A couple other brand examples we can chat about, and certainly not limited to, but soups you'll find in this aisle. So a couple brands that we like the nutrition labels is Health Valley Canned Soup, Amy's Canned Soup brand, Well Yes, Harvest brand is good, or any of those sipping type cups often are a good serving portion. Tomato sauce can be tricky. A lot actually have added sugar and added salt. So we like Rinaldi's no salt added. My favorite is Alessio's spaghetti sauce. Or, if you have a favorite and you just don't want to let it go because we all have our secret spaghetti sauce recipe we might like, try adding one with salt and one without to really balance out that ingredient. Consider your dressings too. You might aim for ones with healthy fats, right? Oil-based. You might try olive oil and vinegar or yogurt-based dressings they have now with Bolthouse or Opa brands. They also make seasoning mixes like Lindsay talked about that you can actually add to your own base like oil and water. Another thought is make your own dressing. One example could be mix 3 tablespoons of olive oil with 1 garlic clove chopped, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Whisk together and you have yourself a simple dressing. You really can get all your nutrition in these aisles. Get it? Can? All right, enough corny jokes. Now we're going to move on to our last corner, which is the bread aisle. If the fresh bakery smell doesn't hit you first here, the vast variety probably will. Many people feel that bread is off limits when it comes to diabetes. I hear it all the time. I can't eat bread. We do want to be mindful of portions when it comes to bread, but they are not off limits. In fact, breads, if you choose certain ones, can provide you with great carbohydrate energy source as well as fiber. Current recommendations are to make at least half of your grains 100% whole wheat. If you're unsure if your grain is whole wheat, there's 3 ways you can tell. One is look for the whole grain stamp. You can actually see it on the slide here. It says 100% whole grain. The other thing is see if the label says 100% whole wheat, like the title. Don't be tricked because sometimes it might say wheat bread or honey wheat, and this does not necessarily mean that it's 100% whole wheat. as we talked about last week, even white bread starts as a whole wheat at one point. So the word wheat isn't necessarily mean it's 100% whole wheat. And lastly, you can also flip your package over, your bread package, and look at the ingredient list. We want that first ingredient to be whole wheat flour. If you don't like whole wheat bread, try to find options with at least 3 grams of fiber. Maybe you do choose like a multigrain or a white bread that has oats or seeds on it, something to give you that fiber. Or maybe you go and get your whole wheat through pasta or brown rice instead. Some other things you might see here are tortillas or bread thins and bread rounds. These are certainly great options as well. So carbohydrates are very important for fiber and fuel. However, with diabetes, we just certainly want to consider those amounts and the types that we're choosing. So that brings us to the end of our grocery store tour. Before we answer questions, though, we wanted to highlight some key takeaways from our series.
Yes, I can't believe that is the end already. So thanks to, all of you who have been here for the past 6 weeks. Some key takeaways that you can remember from way back 6 weeks ago are, that type 2 diabetes is a result of your pancreas not producing enough insulin, insulin resistance, or a combination of the two. That was way back from week 1 with our nurses. You might also remember that treatment for type 2 diabetes includes a medical treatment plan, self-management, lifestyle changes, and education. So applying everything you've learned over the past 3 weeks, as well as talking to your doctors, working with other people in your support system, and making these changes are all important. When you worked or heard from Phil in week 4, you learned that exercise can improve your diabetes management, especially doing that resistance training. That's really important. And then the past 2 weeks with Kate and myself, we learned that consistent carbohydrate diet is key for blood glucose management, and that carbohydrates are not the enemy. You just need to be conscious about the choices you're making, the portion sizes you're choosing, and finding ways to appropriately fit these foods into your diet each and every day. So we encourage you now to talk with your healthcare provider about how to minimize your risk of complications, how to best manage your diabetes, and to see if, they have answers to any of your other questions or concerns. We certainly, now's the time to build your support team and to make changes. And we can help. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us here at Connect Care 3 if there is anything else our chronic disease management team can do to assist you. If you need the assistance of a health coach, a registered dietitian, or a nurse, we're here to help you on your journey to improving your health and wellness, especially when it comes to managing diabetes. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, either at the phone number on the screen, by emailing us, or by checking out our website. We would be happy to help you in any way we can. And with that, we will conclude our 6-week series. We put a little graduation cap there to just signal that, this is the end. You guys all did a great job, and we thank you so much for participating. Just so that you are aware, just like we've been doing the past 6 weeks, later this week you'll get a recording sent to you of this webinar, and in the near future we will also have all of the recordings from the 6 weeks available on our Connect Care 3 YouTube channel, and that should also be on our website in the near future as well. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help you. And thank you so much for your participation and for your time over these past 6 weeks.